says.
So I think from what I've heard and listened through the presentations, Ayobami Adebayo has a way of capturing her readers through connecting the reader to the story, and I really feel this story, and it's amazingly woven. I think it's a very relevant piece for our current society because based on what you guys have been discussing, I have a feeling that there's full of raw, honest emotion and countless plot twists.
Oh my
A
gosh.
couple,
Yeah.
a couple navigating love, dishonesty, infertility, loss, and family expectation. So I think everything just feels so real, and it's making me learn more about the Nigerian culture, and I think I feel encouraged to read this book.
And
Yeah.
thank you very much for your comments, John. I'm encouraged by your response because that's my goal and intention of this project, that people don't just read the book and just say, oh, I read the book. But what are you learning from the book? And can you unpack it for someone that was not there? And the fact that at least you can get a taste of what we experienced. I'm honored that we are on the right track with this project. And man, I'm so happy. And let me just mention one thing. And before I mention one thing, I'd like to welcome Garfield. Garfield, welcome. Please turn on your video. Let's see you say hello. Hello, Garfield. Can you hear us? Garfield, are you there? Okay. I guess where Garfield is trying to, okay, he's connecting to audio. Garfield, yes, please, we just want to welcome you to this session. We'd like to hear your voice and see you. But then right now, I just want to say I'm honored to see more guys on this session than the regular sessions. It's humbling. So yes, Seven, go ahead. You have the floor.
So, oh yeah, so I think we were discussing the themes at some point,
Yes, we
and I
were.
think okay, there are several themes that come up, but I think one very major theme that I feel I needed to talk about is loss, because as the book opens, we get to see the main the character discussing the loss of a mom, and then as we go through, there's so much loss, and then we have the loss of the first child, and then we get the loss of the second child, and then towards the end we have no at some point we have is it Duton or Dotun also losing
Yes.
his family, and then we also have um, the main character, I'm forgetting his name, losing his father.
Akin.
So Akin, yes, thank you. And that's one thing that carries you through this book, because it really, really does wear heavy on you. Because just when you think you can't deal with with more pain, you turn the chapter and something else comes in. And there's also the loss of marriage, because we lose. Um, she was called Fair who? Fenma, Fair, the
And
second wife.
Funle,
Yeah,
if,
Funle.
if
Yeah,
I
I called
remember
her
correctly.
Fun. Yeah, I called her Fun short. Yeah, and also we lose her, and then even how she dies is just so striking, as in it's like she was just chopped off, and then that's the entire theme, and I think it has that dark cloud hanging from the minute you start reading up to the very end. But though at least it ends on a higher note, but then you're left with so many questions on what happens next. And I remember discussing that part with some of the people here, and then we were trying to think: do you think they came back together? Did they come up with a shared custody agreement? So I think that theme of loss is really prominent and features prominently in the book.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Seven. You're so right, because even as I think one of the first things they say in in the beginning is how she lost her mom, and how just that defines you as a person in that society, because they say if you're without lineage, you are nobody, because people do not have a past that they can connect you to. But they say, oh, they've come from this line of good people or bad people or what specific kind of people. So I think that not having a lineage, she articulates what that not having that means. And yeah, wow, I love how you articulated that, Seven, as a theme. So for Lynn, who has just jumped on, Seven was talking about the theme of loss in the book and how it's consistently navigated through the book. So now that Lynn is back, Kawesa, you are talking about morality in the family. So please continue about that thought.
Oh yeah. Like when Akin learned that, okay, he knew from the word God that he has some issues with his manhood. So like the whole idea of getting into a marriage with a partner and not informing them of your steps, uh, living through years not, without a child, uh, the mother-in-law putting pressure on the wife, he himself getting to convince the brother to get him a child. So there's a lot of moral questions that arise on whether he was right or he was wrong. Then you're left wondering who played the other. Is it Akin or is it Yazid as a wife? Uh, so it's quite complex. Then the family know, okay, then the mother-in-law seeing the rift between the sons and blaming it on the daughter-in-law. Like there's a lot of moral questions that arise, and I think it's quite relative. To some it might be okay what Akin did. To some it might not be right. To some, being open from the get-go with your partner of your fertility or infertility might be important. So, okay, I found it, okay, it gives me more questions than answers. Like if it was me, what will I do? Will I be honest with my partner? Will I manipulate them into an affair? Na unajua, okay, regardless of the sickle cells, let's say the kids were healthy, there are a lot of moral questions that would arise later on in the future. Like at some point, Yejide came to appreciate the brother more than the husband because he was more accommodating, as you mentioned. So you're left wondering how the family units look like as the kids grow up, because there's already a law. Okay, this disconnect between husband and wife already. The only thing uniting them is a child whom doesn't even belong to the husband. So I found that quite striking. And as Seven has mentioned, the way the book ends leaves a lot of questions on what happens, what next. Like when the mother meets the daughter, you're wondering like, will it be okay? Will it be a typical mother-daughter relationship? How will they define their association? Like these are very African questions. Okay, there are things we've seen happen to other people, to some of us. So, like, there's that familiarity, and there are also more questions that I'm left with still lingering. I think with time, I'll get to answer them. Yeah.
And I think that's the mark of a great author, that they don't answer all your questions at the end of the book, but they arouse more questions. And just before I raise my point, I'd just like to welcome Aurelia and Wanjiku. Oh, it seems Aurelia has dropped off. Sorry. Welcome, Wanjiku. Please unmute yourself, turn on your video and say hello. Let's see you.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm fine. Sorry, I got a bit late, but I said today I have to join in.
Yes, welcome. So just to catch you up to speed, we've already introduced ourselves. We've already said what we do, why we joined the book club, what we expected. We finished part one and part two, and now we're talking about part three, the themes. Part one was a summary. Part two was the writing style. So now we're on to part three. And just to summarize this session, Lynn pointed out about suffering. Seven pointed out about loss. Kawesa spoke about morality in the family. And yes, I'm just catching you up to speed onto that. So since you're joining us right now, feel free to introduce yourself, tell us what you do, why you joined the book club, how you found the book.
Okay. Wanjiko Njoroge Oteri is my name. I am currently in supply chain. So I work with a company called Kiosk, but I'm basically in supply chain, the bit on distribution and warehousing. I joined the book club because other than the fact that I read a lot of books, I rarely find, someone who's read the same book as me so that we can discuss. And most of the time, even maybe when I tell someone, oh, there's this book, amazing book I read, and then they're like, send it to me, then we can discuss. And then, well, the discussion never happens. So the fact that Anissa said that in this club we would be reading, so that is one of the things that got me into the club, because I was already reading and I still read. How I found the book, I read this book I think last year, so I a bit struggled with reading a book, unless it's rereading rather, because unless it's a what do you call it, what do you call it, these are kinds of books I can reread because I'm looking at specific lessons. But for a novel, I feel like I already know what is going to happen, so I struggle just a bit rereading. But as usual, I found the book really one, it was interesting for me. It was really interesting. It kept me on my toes, and how all these things happen. And I feel like it's so unfortunate for this couple. When they started, I was so happy for them. So the things, I think, what do we call it? The way we say life happens. I feel like life happened a lot to them. And I was there asking myself, is it really fair for all this to happen to them? And then there was the issue of there's a bit where they talk about up to a point, love is true and stuff, but it cannot persevere everything. Like, stuff can break whatever love you two had, because their love was real, the connection was there. And it got me asking, I mean, if I ever get married and we are really in love, and then life starts happening, will it survive? What makes it survive? Those are the questions I was asking myself. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing. And just before I introduce Garfield, John, you've put up your hand. Yes, please share what you'd like to say.
Sorry, it's Jordan. So
Yes.
I think the themes in Stay With Me are not new, because there's an aspect of polygamy, infertility, infidelity, and society's perception of the role of women in marriage. Because African spirituality is practiced casually alongside Christianity and modern medicine. So cultural mythology and um, folktales are spun into the table. But what keeps the story in this book engaging is the unraveling of family secrets, a suspicious death. There's grief. There's a great use of cliffhangers and the unpredictability from chapter to chapter. Yeah.
And you bring out a theme that I'd like us to discuss more, the reality of African spirituality in our lives. I think we think it's big in Nigeria. I know it's also big in Kenya, but I think we choose not to acknowledge it. You know, you'll see a lot of posters on telephone poles, Dr. Mganga looking for love, blah, 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 you know, call so and so. And even though we pride ourselves being a Christian nation, I think, like you've mentioned, the fact that we have our African spirituality and we also look towards it in certain situations might make a lot of Kenyans cringe, especially those who are, who we would call strong Christians. They would frown upon that action of seeking methods outside of church if you feel church is not helping you. And yes, we don't really talk a lot about infertility and how women experience it and how men experience it. So yes, John, you're right. I appreciate how the book brings that out. So I'd like to welcome Aurelia Garfield. Welcome. No, we can't hear you. No, not yet. I must see if it's your earphones or... Uh-oh. Yes, we can't hear you yet. Try maybe, try seeing if it'll work without the earphones.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Garfield,
Sorry,
we are receiving you.
I can't if I remove the. Okay.
Yes, so I
And
believe,
what of now?
yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Can you hear us? We can hear you loud and clear.
No, you can hear me right now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm Scholar.
Yes, Scholar, welcome.
Scholar Chepchumba. Garfield is just the nickname. I did law. I studied law. And I joined the book club so that it can allow me to read more. I tend not to finish the books that I start. So at least this group gives me that space. Endelea kusoma and then get to finish whatever it is that I start. Stay with me. I enjoyed reading the book, and I was a bit pissed about everything, especially when it comes to fertility and everything, where the husband decides to now let the woman take the blame instead of just coming out and saying that I have a problem, this and this. So him allowing the wife to shoulder in a responsibility, such huge responsibility, did not really sit well with me. And then where you encourage the brother to come, I think that is something that you need to sit down and discuss, because I think the wife was very open-minded. So if he had come and talked and decided on the options to pursue, she would have been, at least she would have said something. It's always good to allow your spouse to have a say in some crucial matters, and especially when it comes to children. Generally, hello?
Go ahead, yes.
The book, it isn't that bad, really. I'll talk as we continue discussing.
Okay. And I'm glad you bring that point up because, you see, loving your partner is one thing, but being able to have a conversation is another. Because even, and I mentioned it earlier, I love how it shows the man's world and the woman's world, how they're thinking, they're behind the scenes. And you mentioned about you being pissed that he blamed her, but we can see the pressures on both sides, you know? I think even in life, what this book shows us is we are shown images of love, but we're never shown images of how to communicate tough things, because being a woman has its burden, being a man has its burden. And that's why I love stories. It's showing us, hey, these are the pressures a woman is thinking. Even just look at the argument at the very beginning. He's wondering what's going on, you know? And she's like, don't call me her, don't call me darling. And then in her mind, you say, oh, please don't stop calling me darling. You see, a man can only go by what he hears verbally. Then, so you see, already communication is hard to execute. Because if they're having a small argument already about something non-inconsequential, how can he be open to say, I want to bring another woman in? And it's not me that wants to bring a woman in. We can see this guy loves her to death. He adores this woman. Yet you can see she doesn't see it from his eyes. So you can see also the male side, which I really appreciate. This book brought out that a lot of women, and this is just my perspective, a lot of women don't see. And a man does not know how to navigate that conversation because he didn't actively go out and seek out Funle. It's mother-in-law that pressured. You can see this guy was like, hey, Yejide, I love you to death. And we can see that. So even as we respond the way we're responding, I'm happy how we are responding to this. And I hope that I'm loving the discussions already. I hope that as men, as women, we can show what we are receiving from this end. And John, just before I get to you, I'd like to welcome our newcomers, Joe and Leah. Joe and Leah, you know the drill. Joe, you came in first, so unmute yourself. Tell us your name, what you do, why you joined the book club, and we're already on part 3 discussing the themes. So just tell us how you found the book, the summary, and the writing style, just in a few sentences. Go ahead, Joe, unmute yourself, and let's see you. Hey, lovely office.
Hi guys, sorry, I used this. I used it for a last meeting, so it just used it again. But lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. So my name is Joanne, and as you can see, I work at Windrock, right there. Yeah. So I joined the book club because I am an avid reader, but I wanted a society or a community where we can, have discussions about the book. That is usually, the extra stuff, because when you read a book, I don't know if this happens to everyone, but I usually have book hangovers. So when you get to talk to people about it, at least you get over and move on to the next book. Yeah. All right. So in terms of the book, I liked it. It was a pretty easy read. So it was easy for me to get through the book quite easily. And in terms of what I thought about the book, I'm a bit biased. So I am for Yejide because she has been through a lot. And what stood out for me was the place of a woman in society, especially in African society, whereby, first of all, this is a woman who is educated. She's gone through university. But the surprising bit is that she doesn't understand sex education. Like, her being put in such a position whereby she doesn't really know, what's going on. That was really eye-opening, and I think that's something that we as a society should, look into and maybe make sure that that's included in schools. And then I also, yeah, about the place of a woman in society, I was also thinking about the woman being put in a position whereby she has to carry the burdens of the family. So, for instance, when they went to visit the doctors, she would say that she would let the husband say that we have a good, sexual relationship, when she didn't really understand what that was. So that was an interesting position for her to be in. And I empathized with her because she didn't have a mother. She also didn't have any sort of family to look up to or to have this sort of discussions with. And I don't know if this is the writer's way of writing, but I felt really sad for the lady because she didn't even have friends that she could, disclose this to or have discussions to. She did have a friend, but then they never had these sorts of conversations that are more in depth. Yeah, so that was really very interesting for me to read about. And yeah, I liked that the writing was in first person. That makes it easier for you to really relate with the characters and also understand what the characters are thinking about. And I loved that there were two perspectives. So you get the female and the male perspective, which is really eye-opening. Yeah, so that's it for me, guys.
All right, thank you, Joe. Yes, Leah, since you're on the road, I know you're not able to put on your video, but please put on your audio, and you already know the drill. You introduce yourself, say what you do, why you're in part of the reading book club, give us a brief summary and some of the writing themes, because we are talking some of the writing styles, because we're right now talking about the themes. So go ahead, Leah.
You guys, I won't talk much. I'm actually packed somewhere. Let me not contribute much because I'm on the road. I can't multitask. So I'll be listening to you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, John, yes, you have your hand. Please go ahead. John Gakunju, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, I can hear you.
Yes, yes, yes. And please turn on your video so guys can see you as you share your
Sorry,
contribution.
I'm actually standing outside
Okay,
somewhere, so you'll not be able to see me.
okay.
So I think one of the central themes in Stay With Me is children and childhood. Why I say this is because both Yejide and Akin grow up with stories that contribute to the narrative of how they think, like a framework of how they perceive life and their roles as man and woman. So these are tales they listen to as children that cause an impression on them for the rest of their lives. So their entry into adulthood and their struggles causes them to shift that narrative to eventually suit how, I mean, they have actually experienced life, taking into account the pain and discord they've had to face. So perhaps this shifting of narratives, in my opinion, is what needs to happen in reality.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate about this book is it brings both the male and female perspectives, both their beauty and ugliness, if I can say that, the good and bad. Because for a lot of media that I am exposed to, like if you look at newspapers or TV and media, it tends to paint the guys as failures, and women are just on the receiving end. But that's why I'm glad to see it openly shows the emotions of both ends, what both ends are experiencing, the challenges, how they respond to, and why they're happening. So thank you for sharing that. Yes, Garfield, you have your hand up. Please unmute yourself and let's see you and go ahead.
So as I wanted to say something on the child, on the role of children. You see, who decides as a couple or a family, who decides when to have kids, who decides? Is it the husband, the mother, or our families, our extended families? As in, not everyone is prepared to have kids. Because I'm thinking, if I am in a place where I want a kid and my husband also decides it's not the right time to have a kid, then at what point does our in-laws get to come and change whatever it is that we decide as a couple? Because I'm thinking, you see, at the end of the day, the two, the family, the mother is the one who pressured the husband so much into having kids. You see, a family does not really necessarily mean we have to have a kid or a child so that we can get a family. As in, a family, it is already a family, the husband and the wife. So these other pressures that we put so much into our marriages, it it destroys so much. If the mother did not come in and say that you need to have a kid, blah blah blah, no second wife would have been brought into the picture. There will be no infidelity and all these other kinds of things. So why do we get married to begin with? Is it our purpose? Is it to have kids, or just a fulfillment of happiness, the intimacy between two people? So when we decide to talk about kids, really, we should know the union, if our end goal is to have the children or just the normal, which is very controversial. People get married to have kids to continue, but see, at the end of the day, it's the two people that decide what it is that we really want. So in my opinion, to to the husband, really, kids was never really a factor, because you see, if the she's called Funmi, the second wife, was brought in because we find there's a statement that says she was introduced so that she could give children for him to need. You see the needy part. You see, like, for him to need, and it's not really what you wanted. This is an assumption that maybe you want kid ni nini hizo zote. Kama the wife wanted the kid, angekuja kuja aseme, you know what, my husband, it's now time, I'd like a kid, let us explore our options and all other kinds of things. So these
Okay.
pressures, we need to understand why we get into some of these unions.
All right. I'm glad you bring that question
So,
up,
so
and I'm glad you bring that question up, and I will put it to the floor. And I see John has already beat me to it. So yes, John, it seems you have a response.
um, I think in a response or in line with what she's saying, I think this the stigma and ostracism that Yejide faces in this book is a reality for many women. Perhaps the question that is highlighted in Adebayo's novel is, what does a child represent for the parents? I think, and any conscious reader will agree that the main evil in the entire situation is the social pressure to have children. And you see, that pressure exists because of the weight that is placed on individuals and couples to get married, have children, and settle down with a family. So, in present, and you see, it is present in most cultures, Western or Eastern, to some extent. It begins with the conditioning that for successful living, you should be married by a certain age and have children by a certain time. So there's nothing wrong with the institution of marriage, but I think we need to rethink why the beginning of a marriage is accompanied with the sound of a ticking clock and the constant asking of when the couple are going to get pregnant.
That is a very impactful insight, John. And now I'd love to hear from the others, but we have 3 minutes left. So I just have a question that ties into what John and Garfield have shared. It seems that the main force that pushed this story forward is the mother-in-law. So it is the woman that pushes for kids to happen. So let's ask, women, if you have if you've had a child here, please, can you enlighten us on the process? Because I've met women who, maybe you go to the supermarket, you'll see a kid and all of you start going, oh, I want a kid. And because we are not equipped with the womb, we are unaware of how, whatever chemical reaction is going on in your body. So please, would you mind sharing anything? Or if you have had a sister or a relative and you've been there at the front lines observing, or if you're a mother, please, would you mind just sharing something that we could understand? Penny, Wanjiko, Lynn, Joe?
I do have a child,
Yes.
but no, it was an oops. So there was really no pressure from anyone or anything. Yeah. So I've not had an experience where someone was pressuring me to have a child, although I have witnessed with my sister. So pretty much, but it's a different sort of pressure because she was not married then, and for over, let's say, a couple of years, say like 4 years, everyone was just hinting on, it's as if you're not complete. Yes, you've done your MBA, you head somewhere in an international company. You're not even. I mean, like career wise, you're fulfilled. And for her, she'd say personally, in terms of personal life, she's also fulfilled. But no one was believing this. My mom, my aunts. I mean, it just became sort of, all the time when we meet, it was always, again you're alone, again you're alone. So I think, and it
Okay,
was just really fun.
hold that thought, sorry. Yes, we're
Okay.
about to be disconnected. So let's disconnect and reconnect. The link is right there. Just copy so we can reconnect
Okay.
and continue talking about this.